Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'll be talking about evolution of networks from a cyber resistance posture to a cyber resilience posture in the age of smart cities, digital economies, and IoT. My name is Yasir Liaqatullah, and I am VP of Product Management at A10 Networks. Agenda-wise, it's going to be a pretty simple agenda. We'll discuss some trends. We'll discuss how the proliferation of IoT and other devices are creating a problem in the age of smart cities and IoT and digital economy. And then how are they impacting and what's the impact and how do you mitigate these threats and what are the possible solutions? What is an ideal solution as well? It's going to be a quick presentation. So taking a step back, let's look at the IoTs, Internet of Things, and how are they proliferating, especially in the presence of smart cities, digital economies, and in the world of the upcoming 5G networks. On the left side, as you can see that the number of IoT will be really exploding. It's going to be about 30 billion just in a few short years. And this research is coming from Cisco and many other places as well. But essentially, the rise of IoT is real. It's not academic anymore. And it's we are actually feeling the problems as well. And I'll come to that in a second. Also with 5G, especially with 5G and up to a certain extent with Wi-Fi 6 as well, the individual smartphones or individual devices are getting much more powerful. First of all, they are actually have access to much more bandwidth at this point. They are 20 times more, they can have access to 20 times more bandwidth compared to the LTE networks, and they are about 10 times more densely populated. Moreover, when you compare the compute power of these smartphones powered by the latest chips from the industry leaders, you will realize that the power you holding in the palm of your hand is actually immense. It is perhaps as powerful. They're perhaps as powerful as some of the supercomputers of the yesteryears. And you combine these powerful devices, you combine these IoT and these massive number of IoT, and you actually get a real problem at your hand. The reason is that eventually these IoT will be compromised. Even the smartphones will be compromised in some cases. And when they are, they can be weaponized and they can be turned against you or other telcos or other bystanders, and they will be recruited as an army, and then they can attack these specific end hosts. And it's a global problem. Here at A10 Networks, we are running our own cyber threat intelligence unit, and our unit has shown that over the world there are millions of IoT which are just there, and they are compromised. Actually, they're there, just that nobody's controlling them right now. Maybe they are, maybe they are not. But we do see these IoT around the world in millions in some countries, in other countries hundreds of thousands. And this is just our research. So it is a global problem. They do exist, these compromised weapons or weaponized IoT. They're at a massive scale, as I mentioned, that there are at least 30 billion which will be online in just a few years. And even if 10% of them are compromised, that means 3 billion IoT will be compromised at any given time. Now, the IoT, or when they're recruited as weapons, again, the complexity of these attacks are going up. These IoT themselves are based on pretty powerful platform, compute, and otherwise, they're pretty capable devices. And that capability is being used for nefarious purposes right now. The bad guys have learned how to exploit the full power and potential of these IoT. In the past, it used to be a simple single vectored attack. There will be a massive attack, but again, using a simple exploit. Now it's getting much more complicated. Even massive attacks are actually being using different vectors, different attack types. And that is where the problem is, that it's going to be much more complicated, not only to mitigate from a scale perspective, but also from a complexity perspective. And they're designed to circumvent some of these threat detectors and some of these mitigation devices, and to even to burden their CPUs as well. And it's again, bottom line is they're getting much more complicated and complex. And you have seen these, and I'm sure you have paying attention to the news, but if not, then in the past few months, every few weeks we get a new news flash that another massive attack has happened, or a very specific network is compromised. And these news cycles are coming these news items are coming at a very increased frequency now. It used to be once every couple of months. Now it's almost every few weeks. And I am sure there are many attacks who are not even reported for various reasons. Sometimes the newspapers may not pick it, or the electronic publications may not pick it. Other times they're not even reported. And still other times they're not even detected. But these attacks are frequent. They're much more frequent, and they are coming, and they're real. More importantly, these attacks are getting larger than ever before. A couple of years ago, there is a huge attack by the name of Mirai, and Mirai was a few hundred gigs attack, and that was a big news at the time, that Mirai is 500, 600 gig of attack, which is compromising a lot of systems. But now we are already more than 3 times that attack. The latest attack on AWS was 2.3, 2.4 terabits. I'm sure this number is going to go up substantially once these additional IoT come online, and once the 5G networks are more prevalent and bandwidth increases. That kind of creates, or that threat landscape is changing, and that is creating a lot of problems for the new era, and that is the in the smart cities and 5G networks era. And the question is, and question on your mind perhaps will be, that why should you care? And my belief is that you should care regardless of who you are. If you are a telecom operator, of course you need to care about that, and I'll explain why. If you are an end user, again, you need to be very cognizant of these attacks. And even if you're an enterprise type company and trying to integrate multiple of these networks, again, it's in your best interest to keep an eye on this. So let me explain why I'm saying this. Applications which used to be hosted and resided in the centralized data centers, those applications are now moving towards the edge, especially with 5G and in the era of MEC to enable smart cities. These applications are being moved to the edge, smart factories, smart cities, etc. And the primary use cases for this move of the applications is to cater for increased data consumption, or rather processing of data at the edge. More importantly, they are much more reliant on low latency solutions, and low latency is one of the critical solution here. Now, the challenge is that if your Mac, or if your application which is residing in the Mac is being attacked by this DDoS attack, now suddenly in the old days you can just bring down the application, and sometimes you have a way to circumvent that, and you have a way to kind of resist that and detect the attack. Now in the new world, where the applications are reliant on low latency, if you increase the latency, you can make the application useless, or you can render it useless. And that is what is changing in the new smart cities and digital economies. That latency itself is a critical item. Think of remote health use cases, think of connected car use cases, where if you can increase latency from a command and control and healthcare case, if it's a tactile click type environment, and you kind of increase that, then you can actually create a life and death situation, which is not the case earlier. So bottom line is that you not only have to detect, but also you have to be very very sure and comfortable and preventing the latency as well. So the three important things why you should care is that service availability. Essentially, the application and the security needs to be robust, and if there is increased traffic, if there is increased attack or otherwise, the application and the network needs to be able to scale itself. And that means that it needs to be able to orchestrate itself, and also if the network is moving, security should move with it. The second big problem you have to be very careful about is user experience. If your attack is, excuse me, if the attacker can compromise your network, it can induce additional latency, and that is where again your network or your application will be compromised. And the third one is fault tolerance, and that is that in some cases, if for whatever reason your MAC location is compromised, for example, there's a massive attack and the bandwidth is choked, the network and the security elements should be resilient enough to detect that condition, reconfigure themselves, move themselves out to a different location, and kind of heal themselves, if you will. So that is some of the important elements why you should care. Ultimately, in the new era, applications needs to be available and they need to be robust enough to secure themselves. And it's in your own interest to do that. From a telco standpoint, again, if you don't do that, you lose that revenue. From a user standpoint, if you don't do that, then again, you will be considering an enterprise, for example, you will lose a lot of revenue because your systems were not available. The other important point here is that in the past, these networks or these security devices were kind of centralized, and they were able to, you would pick a different system for each element. For example, for a firewall, for an IPS IDS, for a other type of attacks, you will pick one specific component, and you will be able to protect that whole data center because it's a centralized location. When the applications move to the edge, that is where additional challenges emerge. And that is that you do not have the luxury of using one device or one specific function to protect one specific type of attack. And that is where you need to have a consolidated solution which can operate at multiple layers of the stack, detect those attacks, DDoS or otherwise, and protect your system against that. And again, understand that these type of solutions should be built for carriers who are operating 3G, 4G, 5G, and even Wi-Fi 6, etc. These solutions need to be very, very scalable, and they need to be consolidated. And again, that's an important point, that if you, first of all, at the MEC, you do not have enough capacity, space, power, etc., to have a good to put everything in the same place. More importantly, you will be able to, you need to protect all layers of the stack, and that's why consolidation is so important. Now, despite of all of your efforts, if the services fail, as I mentioned, that if the MAC location fail, or if the system is under some kind of zero-day attack and it's not able to recover itself, what do you do then? In that case, the system must be able to scale itself, must be able to resurrect itself. Ideally, it needs to be integrated very, very tightly with the orchestration systems, and it needs to move. If one MAC location is down, you need to move to another MAC location. And that resilience is the key in the emerging world of smart cities and digital economies. If you're not resilient, you will compromise the availability portion of your network. And in the era where low latency is a key, you will actually compromise a lot of things. So that is why it is so critical that your system needs to be resilient, needs to be able to reconfigure itself. Now, what is our position? What is A10 Networks' position in general? But we believe that a modern security requires intelligent automation and machine learning. Again, the first important point I want to mention here is that the legacy security solutions operate on sample traffic. They're put on a mirrored port, and then they detect traffic using sampling technologies. And then based on that samples, they can detect an attack and mitigate an attack and all of those things, which has worked so well so far. But in future, especially in 5G era, you need to be inline, and you need to be inline for multiple reasons. One is that if your data plane is scaling, your security should scale with it. If it has to move with the data plane itself, and that is where the elasticity component comes in picture. But then when you're inline, you're able to automatically, you're seeing all traffic, you have visibility into all traffic. You will be able to auto profile the traffic. You need to kind of create a baseline to see what is good, what is bad. If there is an attack, when you're inline, you can instantly detect that. And that is why automatic attack detection is critical here. And then once you detect an attack, again, in the past, human intervention was required. But in this case, the machine or the system should be intelligent enough, and it needs to have its own algorithms to detect that it's indeed a security problem. It needs to kind of take corrective measures, reconfigure itself, apply the mitigation policies. And then once the system is back online, it's back healthy, it needs to create an incident report, log that report, and that's it. But all of these things have to happen automatically through very robust algorithms, and it has to happen instantly. So to achieve that, you need to have, first of all, you need to be inline. You need to have ML type algorithms built into the system. And then you need to have a very tight integration with the automation and orchestration engines. And that way you can achieve full visibility, you can achieve pinpoint accuracy, and you can build very resilient systems to protect your digital economies and smart cities and all the other 5G services. And that is why we believe that to protect these emerging problems, you need to have a very new, robust solution, and the legacy solutions will not work in this case. Uh, we are we have seen these attacks. We have mitigated a lot of these attacks. Our threat intelligence systems are keeping an eye on the threats even now. And that is where we believe that you need to be aware of these things as well. If you're not, then you will not be able to provide a service which will be valued in the new economy. Thank you very much.